So for the viewers who haven't seen this Gillette advert, can you give me the Sargon of Akkad cliff notes on what you think it is, or how would you describe it to someone that hasn't seen it?
It's just feminist propaganda. It's just 101, and it's so basic. I mean, it starts off with the Me Too movement and toxic masculinity. So you're dealing with a feminist. I mean, the author, the director, was
Kim Gerrig.
Kim Gerrig, yeah. She's a famous feminist director. Who's directed many controversial sort of short clips like this that have caused a stir because she seems to take a one-sided feminist narrative on the idea that women are being oppressed by men and men have to change.
Yeah.
And I mean, the way she was the whole thing conflates like boys roughhousing as children with Harvey Weinstein's predatory behavior in Hollywood. And then they have Terry Crew, who again was assaulted by a Hollywood executive, some powerful Hollywood exec. And it's all tied back as if it was because Harvey Weinstein fought with his brother when he was a kid. It's like, that's not the reason.
Yeah.
The reason is because he's a disgusting, ugly, repulsive pervert with absolutely no moral standards. He doesn't represent anyone but Harvey Weinstein and the goons around him that he protects. That's not reflective of most men. And it's definitely inappropriate to say that it is.
Yeah. It's catastrophic thinking at its absolute worst, isn't it?
It's bigoted thinking at its absolute worst. I mean, we don't just sit there and go, black people, look at these crime rates, you're all responsible.
Yeah.
That would be ridiculously racist. So when they go, men, look at what Harvey Weinstein's done, you're responsible, it's the same logic. So, yeah.
I don't know. So during the advert, the bit that really, really got me was I think they're at a barbecue. So there's a bunch of guys at a barbecue doing man things, drinking beer and flipping beef and stuff like that. And there's a couple of kids play fighting, two boys play fighting, and the scene is allowed to continue, then it cuts away and then it comes back. And the suggestion is that men should step in to stop other men or stop other males, i.e. boys, from play fighting. And you're right that the implication is that by allowing boys to play fight, you are fostering this tyrannical misogynist in waiting.
Yeah. But it sounds ridiculous when you say it, doesn't it? Yeah. To anyone who either was a young boy or who knows young boys, who has children or something like that, it just sounds absurd.
Yeah.
Because young boys play fighting is essentially. I looked up a bunch. I went and researched this to do the video I did on it. Basically, young boys play fighting is completely normal according to leading psychologists.
Oh yeah,
and I mean, every man knows this because when they were a kid, they had play fights with their friends too. It's just like the way men socialize among themselves and establish hierarchies. And like one of the studies that I was looking at was 85% of boys, teenage boys, could tell when a play fight was going on. 85% of the time, they could tell that the fight was there was a play fight because they're having fun. But and this was mostly 70% adults as well, like men and women who had grown up with a brother. But women who'd grown up without a brother always thought that the fights were serious. And so it's like, right, okay, there really is a distinction here about male and female thinking, and women who are not used to what young men are like don't recognize the behavior for what it is. But the thing is, it's the same with animals. You see, puppies fighting and stuff like this. It's just
shit. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just natural, and so they panic about this excessively. And so the kind of, it kind of is a small group of mostly women who don't really understand men and are kind of afraid of them. That's how I view modern feminism these days. That's honestly how I view it, because it's just
the backlash on this Gillette advert's been insane. The YouTube up rate and down rate was 10-1 on dislike. And then,
really?
Yeah, it was 10-1. And then the views didn't increase by a tremendous amount. I was watching this on YouTube yesterday. Views didn't increase by a tremendous amount, and the dislike to like has been brought back down to around about 5-1.
Oh, really? It was 2-1 when I saw it the other day.
Well, it may have even gone further, but when it very, very first went out, and that may be due to just the first adopters are the people who have taken the most offense. So that could be realistic, but there's a lot of accusations of a bit of unfair play going around.
I've seen many people saying my dislike has been removed and things like this.
A lot of comments are being deleted and pinned ones are changing. Have you also seen? I don't know how much truth's behind this, but there's a lot of websites that are reporting it. Have you seen that Kim Gehrig has actually been accused of sexual abuse by 2 men and 5 women?
No, I did not know that. The irony. I mean, I guess we've got to listen and believe, haven't we?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
believe the victims.
Yeah. Well, yeah, definitely. So I'm struggling to find it on anyone who is super reputable yet. I think it's probably dangerous to
I will wait for confirmation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Gillette misandrist. Where is it? Just Gillette misandrist ad was directed by an accused paedophile, Miss Kim Gehrig.
Jesus.
One of her victims committed suicide. Oh my days! Well, I mean, we'll wait and find out a little bit more about that. But no matter whether that's the truth or not, and even if it's not the truth, it probably speaks to just how bipartisan it makes everything. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like, okay, well, even if someone's made that up, they're like, right, well, this is how far the feminist narrative has tried to push masculinity. We need to come up. We need to come back with something that's even more outlandish and ridiculous and. You end up with this extremist sort of. It
is just an entirely one-sided argument that they're having, and the thing is, the only people on the no one in reality thinks that boys play fighting is a particularly harmful behavior because it's always by consent. You know, I mean, we're not talking about bullying, obviously. Bullying is something different, but like. The pathologizing of just male behaviors. And then, I mean, in the advert, you know, when the dad goes up and says, we don't treat each other that way. It's like, well, they both consent. You know, I mean, you could see in the clip they're showing you, the 2 boys have big grins on their face. Yeah. You know, they couldn't have portrayed it more as boys play fighting.
Yeah. It's amicable, right?
It's not aggressive. Exactly, you know, and so it's not wrong for them to treat each other that way because they both consent to being treated that way. You know, they both consent to the sort of competition of the rough and tumble, which is fine. I mean, you know, it's fun when I was a kid to play fight with my friends. Well, I used to like it.
You're totally right as well. It helps. I'm sure if we had Jordan Peterson at hand, I'm sure he'd be able to tell us exactly why. But
exactly.
I mean, I'm waiting for the commentary from him. I imagine will be a thesis on just how wrong Gillette is in terms of upbringing of young men.
But, he'll give us all the psychological literature as well.
And the thing is, although I can't cite it and it's not my field, I've heard him across the content I've consumed of him talking about just how important this is and how it helps young boys to be able to learn the limits of their own strength and the proprioception in terms of how your body moves and how other people's bodies move. And it's the games iterated across time analogy he uses talking about rats. And he says if one rat play fights with another rat and then it loses, it rolls over, and then the rat allows it to come back and play again.
Yeah. So, and you've got to let them win 30% of the time, roughly, to keep them engaged in the game. Yeah. I watch a lot of Jordan Peterson too.
Well, there we go.
No, but I think that there's some definitely some truth to it, and I think it's very much about socializing boys because I think that young men are very powerful. This is what I think. I don't want to say women, but a certain kind of excessively concerned sort of moral busybody woman is usually like, and I can think of many examples of this kind of woman. They're not badly intentioned or anything, but I just don't think they understand. And I think that young men are strong. They're a powerful force in the world when they want to be. And this is usually why society's had quite strict rules for young men. You know, I mean, like if you go back to the Middle Ages, you know, young men would have been taught how to use a spear and a shield and a bow and things like this, and they would have had to, you know, become part of the local sort of militia or something like that, or gone off to fight for the king.
Conscription of some sort, yeah.
There may well have been some kind of conscription, exactly, and it's because it's understood that young men have fighting instincts. You know, not all of them all the time, but there is definitely a part to young men that is naturally designed to fight. And I mean, I watched a documentary, I think it was it Michael Portillo a few years ago, where he effectively went and like some kind of underground gang in London. It was like boxing gang, bare knuckle boxing gang.
Okay.
And it was about the pleasure of fighting because these men who did this, they didn't take drugs or drink. Their drug was fighting itself, the adrenaline kick of it. And I think that like that's what Call of Duty is tapping into. That kind of video game. It's that kind of adrenaline high from conflict and combat.
Catharsis, almost.
No, not quite that. Like, not the the fact that physical competition is also a game. It might become like a deadly game, but there are set rules. And in a war, they're the rules of who can kill who first. They don't have to be rules that are conceptual. They might just be physical rules. But there are set rules, and there's an objective, and both of you are going for it. And it's understood that you're on the same terms. Like for the reason it's not murder to kill a soldier in a battle. It's understood that you're both there to fight. And I think there's a part of the male psyche that enjoys that. And for some men, obviously you get the sort of weaker men who don't like these kind of physical competitions. And I think it's that kind of, and I guess you call it primal if you want, but that kind of urge that the shooter genre is tapping into with kids these days, And I think it's wrong to try and deny that aspect of human nature. But obviously the feminists who have got absolutely no empathy for men whatsoever and don't even try couldn't possibly understand it. And so all they see is, oh, there is a defective woman, as Christine Hoff Sommers puts it. And I think she's right on that. I think they do.
Yeah. I think what's interesting is the fact that the scalable and much more effective strategy for controlling men, or i.e. making men's behavior more holistic and more beneficial to society as a whole, would be to remodel it and have it almost brought on by desire, as opposed to entrenched and locked in by rules. So if you were able to have it be desirable for all men to call out every man that was a rapist immediately, or if you had it as a rule that play fights were something that was taken pride in, but was done with honor and with a sense of decorum, etc., etc., that's much more scalable, and it's much more difficult because it's enforced by the group, as opposed to choosing a top-down approach. That's a bottom-up approach, right? Which is manifested naturally by the culture, as opposed to a top-down approach, which is this. It's almost like trying to litigate.
It's authoritarian, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's here are the rules. A group of people who don't really understand you are going to dictate rules for you, and now you're going to feel these rules are chafing. So there was a New Zealand TV series called 7 Periods with Mr. Gormsby, and it was about this old Victorian, like an old British Empire Army officer had moved to New Zealand to teach a group of kids who were often Maori, but not just Maori, just but it was a group of boys, and I don't know why this thing resonated with me, but there was something about it I found unbelievably charming. And it was because of the old-fashioned way that Gormsby, the teacher, treated the boys. He didn't treat them in the way that boys are treated now. They're not. He didn't scold them for acting like boys. There's fictional, so it's all a representation. But I think there's some truth to the idea of this, because the way he would tell them off is something that really resonated with me. It wasn't you should not do that. It was that's enough. And so it's so when the boys are fighting or playing around being rambunctious, whatever, it wasn't pathologizing them and saying, well, you're wrong, you're doing this because you don't even realize why, and you shouldn't do it because it's bad under every circumstance. It was just know the limit. And so it's not innately wrong to be what you are, but it is wrong to go too far in what you're doing. And that's, I think, the best way to try and talk to young men about how to behave, frankly, if feminists want to do that, and they do want to do that. And it's like, okay, well then, as someone who was a young man, has a son, and a young man has a son, and might have a bit more quote unquote lived experience than your average feminist in this regard, don't tell men they can't do something. Just make sure that they are doing it within an acceptable parameter. Because then it's not bad for them to be innately what they are.
Yeah. Speaking of chafing, there is a scene in the video where a man is shaving his legs as well, I think, isn't there? Have you seen that?
I can't remember.
There's he's got it up on the couch, I think, and he's shaving his legs, which is totally fine. I've got some friends that are swimmers. That might, do you know what it is? Yeah. That might actually only be in the UK version, and if it is, that's hilarious.
Yeah, I don't recall that being in the US
It's
version.
definitely exists.
Oh
So
God, I'm gonna have to watch that.
imagine for a second that I have made you the director of the exact opposite advert. So it's women telling women what women should do from a completely opposing narrative. Can you try and run us through the storyboard of what you think would happen?
Well, surely, what I would want to happen, or what I think we'd end up with.
No, what the equivalent would be if they were to take the exact polar opposite of what we've got.
Well, it'd have to be something about false rape allegations, wouldn't it? It's like women, false rape allegations begin in the school, so we'd have Kavanaugh's trial, where he's being accused falsely by three people who recanted their statements, and one person who just had absolutely no evidence or no corroborating witnesses, or even the time or dates when the accusations are supposed to have happened. It seems that there was nothing against Kavanaugh, and he had unbelievably reputable female character witnesses on his side to back him up. So it would start with something like that: the stress of having to go through this as Kavanaugh. And then we'd talk that back. So, it's my young girl. I don't know. I'd be pathologizing some kind of young woman's behavior where she's getting two
playing
boys
with dolls and
playing with dolls, or getting to, smiling at two different boys or something and getting I don't know.
Yeah.
So it'd be something about a natural female behavior that that I would be trying to make something that they need to stop.
You shouldn't be putting your makeup on during the morning. You should be letting your leg hair grow.
Well, whatever it is. But the thing is, I don't think that the reverse should be made. Obviously,
No.
I obviously
it's to illustrate just how insane it is. And I if you were to tell young girls that they should be less feminine,
it'd be awful. Why?
I don't know.
Yeah, why would anyone do that? What a horrible thing to do.